Welcome back to Rosie's Garage. And on this episode, we're going to add some stopping power.
I can't stop! Help!
This is all S10 front end, so we're going to be using the Power Stop brakes and rotors on the front of this. And this kit can be purchased from Speedway Motors. It's an undercab pedal assembly. There's the part number for the master and part number for the booster. And then the pedal itself, I'll get a number for. This is a proportioning valve we'll be using. And some 3/16 brake lines, 2 at 30 inches, 2 at 40 inches, and then 2 at 6 feet. And I grabbed some benders off of, these are actually from Summit Racing, but grab them from Amazon or wherever. And some brake line mounting tabs and rivets. And those are just S10 lines there. And then the rear brakes we still need to get on. This is Quick Performance's 11-inch disc brake kit, and their brackets and everything that you can order and get with their 9-inch. We're getting ready to assemble this master and the booster and proportioning valve. Some things to take note of is do not forget to insert this in the master, otherwise nothing's going to work for you. And also, these masters have dual ports. You can use either side depending on your application. This master cylinder is going to be sitting, against the frame over there. So I'm going to use these two plugs and plug off the side that I'm not going to use. And then this side, this proportioning valve will bolt underneath it here, and we'll connect these lines to tie those two together. So let's get this assembled. The pedal assembly bolted right up, so that's all good to go. While I was at it, I decided to get these calipers mounted. And for those of you wondering, on these 9 inches, you have an inner bracket, the spacer, and then the outer bracket, and then caliper just bolts right up to it. We ran these AN brake lines from Quick Performance, and I decided to route them on the front of the axle just because there wasn't a whole lot of room on the back side with the coilovers being right there. And everything clearance pretty good, turned out all right. I use these little clips to help hold it in place here, and then once on this bracket on either side. And then running this braided line to this bar support here, and it's mounted on the back side. We'll run a hard line going from here back over to there. Got the rear brake line ran. Just need to use this pop rivet and bracket and mount it in place when we get all said and done here. And we're using these 2 PSI residual valves. And what they do is, if you have a frame mounted or low master cylinder, they keep the pressure from bleeding back into the master and overflowing it. So on disc brake setups, you need to have a 2 PSI residual valve, and if I had drum brakes in the rear, then you need a 10-pound residual valve to keep that pressure pushed back. Next, we're moving on to the front. Have these S10 rubber brake hoses. We're gonna get mounted up, and then I'm gonna use these All-Star brackets. Once I get it in place where it kind of needs to be, I'll mount these up and then run the hard lines back to the master, and we'll be done with that. We got all the hard lines ran. I think turned out pretty decent. Ended up using these little brackets and this pop rivet to mount everything nice and solid. So the next thing I'd like to work on is getting this line lock mounted up. Ended up going with a Jegs line lock, and then some fittings off of Amazon and a couple rubber hoses to connect everything. I'd like to pull this front line off of here, off the master cylinder for the front brakes, and then run the hoses from there over to the line lock. Hopefully I can mount the line lock over here. That way if we do burnouts, our rear brakes aren't dragging and burning those up for no reason. Got the line lock installed. Ran into a little issue where I had the wrong fittings to go run 4AN lines from this master cylinder over to the line lock. So if anyone's using this master cylinder and wants to do that, it takes these 4AN to 3/8-24 inverted flare fittings to run from here over to the line lock, which takes a 4AN to 1/8 NPT fitting. But we got that done and sealed up, and the last thing to do is to bleed the system. If you learned anything from this video, I hope it's this, and that's how to easily bleed the brakes by yourself. All you need is an empty bottle, some tape, some zip ties, and this rubber hose that you can grab at Menards or your local hardware store. This one happens to be 3/16 inside diameter and 5/16 outside diameter, just big enough to slip over the bleeder valve. We've topped off the master cylinder and started with the brake that's the furthest away from the master cylinder. We've opened up our bleeder valve just a little bit, put a rubber hose on there, zip tied that on tight, and then ran the hose up like this. If you do it like this, it creates kind of a sealed system where air bubbles can move up and over and out, and the fluid remains. And so you just start pumping, and you keep pumping until all the air bubbles are completely out of the system. And then you just lock up the bleeder screw, and you're all done. The one thing I wanted to note is to make sure that you keep your master cylinder full of fluid while you're doing this, because if you let it run out, you're going to let air get right back into that system. So make sure it stays topped off. We got one done and 3 more to go. I had an issue where the front portion of this master cylinder would not bleed. I could not get fluid out of it. I even took this line off and it would pump air out, but fluid would not flow through. So I ended up taking my little fluid transfer pump and hooking it up to brake fluid and pumping it back through the master cylinder to get it to prime up. So if any of you guys are using this particular master cylinder and have that issue, that's something that worked for me. Well, that's gonna do it for this episode. We got the brakes done and everything bled. On the next episode, we'll work on getting the cab back on, powertrain in, and some wiring. Thanks for watching Rosie's Garage. We'll catch you next time.